Welcome to Shadow the Stereotypes, where our intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention here is to showcase and highlight men of color who are doing amazing things in the world. And joining me today is somebody who is doing just that. His name is Dr. Shelton Goode. And let me tell you, he is shattering the stereotypes in so many different ways. And we're going to jump in and have a conversation about his specialty, which is diversity. But before we do that, we're going to jump in with a few icebreaker questions. But first of all, welcome to the show, Dr. Goode. How are you today?
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me, and appreciate your audience for taking the time to listen in on this conversation. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. So first of all, let's begin with where you're from and tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up for you.
Oh, okay, good. I like that. He said it was going to be an icebreaker. So born and raised in Philadelphia.
Okay.
More specifically, the Strawberry Mansion neighborhood of North Philly. So shout out to all the people in Strawberry Mansion. Came from modest beginnings. That translation, we were poor. Every day I had two parents that worked hard to trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. And, had a brother, two sisters, and parents who believed in education. They worked real hard to send us all to private parochial school. And I think that was the start of putting me on a good, solid track. Even though I lived in a tough neighborhood, I was bused every day to a private parochial school, and that education set a foundation that I'm standing on today.
There you go. Now, if you'll tilt your head just a little to the left, let me see what's behind you on that chair there. What do I see on that? I see an eagle. What is that? What
Philly in the house. we representing 24/7.
There you go. Love those eagles, man. Love those eagles.
And all my folks back in Strawberry Mansion. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So name a woman who has inspired you to be who you are.
Oh, that's easy. My mother.
Put her name out there. Tell us her name.
Carolyn. Carolyn Goode. She's up in heaven, still sending me down angels to look after me. But she was the sort of person that said, "Hey, we live in the hood, but we're not from the hood." And she insisted that I'm slaving to send you to a private school. Don't bring no B's in here. And that was it right there. You could not come home with, I tried my best, or, I'll do better next time. No, you had to score threes. You had to get double-digit rebounds, points, and assists every day, period. No ifs. My father, he basically deferred to my mother and says, "Hey, do whatever she says." That's what I do. So, I love them, but at the end of the day, it was my mom.
Yeah, I know. Nothing like that mother's love and guidance, right?
Yeah, she was hard.
Now, on the flip side of that, name a man who has inspired you to be who you are.
Obviously, I'm gonna give a shout out to my pops. I saw him go to work two jobs, and just do what a man was supposed to do. Put a roof over your head, put clothes on your back, put food in your belly, and then gave me opportunity and said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you opportunity. It's up to you to take it from there." So pops is one. Alan Bellinger, Air Force Chief Master Sergeant, who took me under his wing and taught me the meaning of. He said basically his philosophy was real simple. If you ever find yourself in a dilemma and you don't know what to do, he says, just ask yourself one question: what's the right thing to do? He says, and then if you got enough courage, do it. He says, if you do that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come out better than trying to take the shortcut, trying to work around it. And Chief Bellinger, he says, we find ourselves in dilemma. First thing we ask ourselves, how did I get here? Why me? He's like, no, ask yourself one question: what's the right thing to do to move forward? And then last but not least, Reverend Gerald Durley. If you don't know Reverend Gerald Durley, he's one of those unsung Black heroes. Just Google him The man is got a PhD in psychology, taught at Morehouse School of Medicine, is right now one of the top environmental justice people in the country. He was an advisor to Obama and Clinton. So I count him today. In fact, one of my books, Crisis as a Platform for Change, from Strawberry Mansion in Silicon Valley, dedicated to Gerald Durley. So yeah, three people, easy.
Good to see that you've got those pillars that you've built your life on top of. That's great. Now, I know you're going to have a ton of these, but I want you to try to narrow down to just one. Okay. Name a book that challenged you to change how you see the world.
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Okay. Up until that time, I had limited exposure to the struggle, whether it was the traditional civil rights struggle, as we all know, or some of the other struggles. I didn't know. Reading Malcolm's autobiography basically was opened my eyes. You know, quote a scripture is like, "Before I was blind, now I see." Hey, that's Malcolm's book did that for me, and that set me on pretty much. I'm probably going to trace what I'm doing today back to me reading that book and trying to do my little bit in the struggle.
There you go.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. What would a perfect day for Shelton look like? What would you be doing on a perfect day?
On a perfect day?
Yep.
On a perfect day, it would be me and my grandson, who Camden Alexander. He's only 3, but it'll just be me and him, probably out on the basketball court. He's only 3, but I swear to God, he's a basketball phenom at 3. Wow. And it would be great just to get him out on the court and just, one day be able to look back and say, you're NBA star today, but Grandpa had you out on that court at 3. That would be just perfect. That to me. And I know both of my sons are going to be mad because I'm not talking about spending a day with them, but my wife, she's going to be mad. But my grandson, he's legacy, man. He's legacy.
There you go. Well, nothing like grandkids, that's for sure. I've got one and one on the way. Got one due in December. So
okay, congrats.
I feel you on that one. On that one. All right, last icebreaker question. If I gave you a magic wand,
right,
and with this magic wand, you could create anything your heart desired,
right,
what would your life look like 10 years from now?
My life?
Your life.
Well, that's going to be hard because I've got a really, really good life right now. But 10 years from now, 10 years from now, my life, gosh, it'd be hard. So I'm going to defer to, I've got 2 sons on active duty. One's in the Navy, one's in the Air Force. 10 years from now, if both of them are killing it in their Air Force career, if they have the financial security, if they've listened to just one of the dozens of things I've shared with them around financial security, what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a father, if I could just see some evidence of that 10 years from now, and I'm seeing it now, but 10 years from now is when they're going to be in that sweet spot. Yep. And, one will be approaching his 40s. The other one will be right behind them. When they get in that sweet spot, if I can look at them and say, okay, I'm through. I'm tapping out. I'm through. They got it. They got it. That's what I want. I mean, when we have our kids, isn't that what we want for our kids?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing like watching your kids grow up, be self-sufficient, no drama. You can look at them and smile, Yeah. So that's when you've done a good job.
Yeah, and I see both of them on the path now. And as for me, I've got a really, I'm in the 3rd phase of my life. I've got a good life. So it'll be hard for me. I need that. I need to know that everything I've done was done to set my sons up so that they my whole thing was to make sure when they were born, they started out on second base. If 10 years from now they're on third base, and I know now they're in a position to set up their kids to start out their lives on third base, I'm good. I'm good.
And see, and this is another one of the reasons why I do this show. Mm-hmm. Because as mentioned, we all know the stereotypes about black men and fatherhood and all of that. Yeah. So I'm really glad to hear you as a father saying what you've been saying. And even more importantly, we're going to talk about some of the amazing things that you've accomplished, which really shatter the stereotype. So first of all, now I want to give you an opportunity to introduce Dr. Goode, the professional. So tell the audience what you do.
Okay, so currently I'm the CEO and president of Icarus Consulting. Icarus Consulting is a firm that specializes in helping companies do two things. Number one, make sure that they're tapping into the emerging labor force that's more and more diverse. Translation, more people of color, more women. Make sure that they are getting their share of that excellent talent. That's number one. Number two, once those people get to those companies, I need to make sure that those companies are a place where where that talent is going to be welcomed, it's going to be used, it's going to be leveraged, meaning that every day, everybody comes to work, goes home, feeling valued, feeling respected, feeling connected to something bigger than themselves. And trust me, there's lots of companies out there, small, big, medium, that need the help of Icarus. So we have clients in the quick service restaurant industry, the energy sector, manufacturing, healthcare, telecom, and even in the sports and entertainment industry. So we've got several high-profile clients, and we're doing some amazing work with them.
Fantastic. Now, the name of your company is Icarus Consulting. So for those of you who do not know, for those who may not know the story of Icarus, I want you to share that story real quickly and explain why you chose that as the name of your company.
Yeah, so here we go. You know, Catholic school boy, had to go to Catholic school, taught by the Jesuits. You had to take Latin. And of course, one of the ways they taught you Latin was teaching you Greek mythology. So one of the characters in Greek mythology is this character called Icarus. In Greek mythology, Icarus wanted to ascend to Mount Olympus so that he could talk to the gods and ask them, why won't you help us down here on Earth? He constructed some wings and he, attempted to ascend to Mount Olympus. He made a critical mistake. He secured the wings with wax. And obviously, as you get closer to the sun, the wax melted and he came back to Earth. Now, here's where Catholic school education helps you understand facts versus what people commonly believe. People believe that's a story about failure, but let's revisit it for a minute. Icarus believed he could fly. He had a good reason for wanting to fly. He wanted to try to make things better for people, and he did something that nobody else attempted to do. Everybody thinks it's a failure, but what people don't know was he had a son, and his son's name was Daedalus. And Daedalus saw what his father attempted to do, picked up where his father left off, and actually constructed wings, ascended to Mount Olympus, and confronted the gods. And as a result, the story goes on that the gods decided to make things better for man. To me, it's an excellent story for Icarus. That is exactly what we're trying to do. We believe that employees in companies, in organizations, should be able to fly. They should be able to go to work, do their best work, and help both themselves and the organizations succeed. So that's our whole job, is to try to make things better for organizations by making things better for the people that matter the most, and that's their employees.
Oh, well, that's definitely a different slant on the story. Because as you mentioned, I think most times people look at that story as a failure. Mm-hmm. About him you know, not paying attention, not listening to the people who told him not to fly, and he was arrogant, and that's why he died, you know, that kind of stuff. So I love your interpretation much better. That's a different.
And when you read it in the original Latin text, you get the more fuller meaning. It was a person that was bold enough to do something for a good reason that nobody else had the courage to do. That's the true story of it.
That's a great foundation to build a company upon, that whole idea. Now, I want to toot your horn just a little bit, because we are talking about shattering stereotypes. So I'm just going to read just a few of your accomplishments, and then I'm going to kind of throw a few questions out. First of all, you have a bachelor's degree from Southwest Texas State University, which is now Texas State University.
Right.
You have a master's degree in human resource management from Troy University.
Right.
And you obtained your doctorate in public administration from the University of Alabama.
Yes.
And obviously you go around speaking nationally and maybe internationally on public administration, human resource, ethics, and diversity topics.
That's correct.
You were the first ever African-American doctoral fellowship by Troy University, and teaching at the university in 1996.
Right.
You've won the Faculty Member of the Year Award in 2005. And you've leveraged your extensive teaching experience to publish your first book, which is So You Think You Can Teach, a guide for the new college professor in teaching adult learners.
Right.
And you're also the founder and CEO of My ABD Network, an organization which helps students succeed in doctoral education programs.
Right.
And there's more that we could go into, but the point that I want to make first and foremost is, first, I just want to acknowledge you.
Thank you.
As a man of color who has achieved this level of success. And what I know is success isn't just about money and stuff.
Right.
And what we need to do is showcase men like yourself to the younger generations to let them understand fully the importance of education.
Right.
Following their passions.
Right.
And making a difference in the world.
Right.
So that's the whole intention of this show, to expose men like yourself to the younger generation and us old hats too. You know, you know, I'm a 60s baby. So, but yeah, we're having a conversation with all men.
Right.
But again, I think it's important because we are so inundated with negative stories about men of color throughout our media. And my belief is that we can no longer rely on the media to put our stories out there.
Right.
Got to put our stories out there. So once again, I just want to say thanks. So I want to come back to just a couple of things that you mentioned earlier about your parents laying the foundation for your education. So they obviously instilled that in you, but what about just that you have an incredible drive? There's something that drives you. What is that thing that drives you to accomplish so much?
The fact that there's a cliche, or I guess you can, a saying that to whom much is given, much is expected. It's just that simple. I'm a Libra. I have to have balance. I was given a tremendous opportunity. Listen, when I say my folks didn't have much, we as family of 6, 4 children, 2 parents, we didn't have anything, man. And the fact that my mother took money that she could have spent on her coat, on a decent coat, on a pair of shoes, on a purse, she put that money into a very expensive private education. Those folks in Philly know about St. Joe's Prep. I mean, it is a parochial school set there in North Philly, and I'm talking, it attracts the creme of the creme from the northeast part of the country, and it was very expensive. We had some grants and took up some donations and stuff like that, but that cost a lot of money, man. That had to be paid forward, in a number of ways. Participating in programs like this, mentoring, coaching, particularly young Black men. I have two young Black men myself. We have to be there for each other, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so me, I'm not going around trying to figure out what my purpose is. I have a lot to offer, and so I tend to pour that and invest, that's the good word, into young Black men. And so I tip my hat to you for shattering Black male stereotypes and using social media and the technology to get the word out.
Nice. And last question. You're a highly decorated Air Force veteran.
Mm.
So first of all, let me tip my hat to you for that.
Thank you.
And what led you to want to join the Air Force?
Yeah. I was tired of not having anything. It was real simple, man. I had to hustle for money for my prom. I had to hustle for money for my graduation, and I just know that I wanted more. The Air Force gave me an incredible opportunity to leverage the education that I had, and then to hyper accelerate me forward. I had a unprecedented military career that, and I call that that first phase of life when you're young, and it gave me incredible skills, incredible foundations. I leveraged that for phase 2, which was a successful career in education and corporate America. So while I was working in corporate America, I was also teaching graduate students in colleges and several colleges and universities. So now I'm in that third phase of life. I have my own company. I have the resources. I have the time. I have the passion and the obligation to leverage that on behalf of people who don't have. And yes, I know that when I talk about the struggle, people of color know what I'm talking about, but Black men in particular, who are under attack from a number of different fronts. I'm standing on the front lines with the brothers to try to say, you know what, let's not let these stereotypes be barriers and enemies. In fact, let's lock arms, arm to arm, like we used to doing, and we can stand tall. So that's it for me. It's not complicated. It's very, very simple. And I've got 2 sons and a grandson that I need to be an example and a model for.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect segue into my next question. So what made you decide that you wanted to stop working in corporate America and launch your own company?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. I did not want to be, as I moved into the third phase of life, I wanted to be relevant. I didn't want to be Dr. Goode, formerly of X company, or Dr. Goode, former professor of X school. I wanted to be Shelton Goode, CEO, president of Icarus Consulting, one of the up and coming diversity superheroes in the industry, helping companies recruit diverse talent and create inclusive workplaces. Present tense, relevancy. That in corporate, you're gonna have to leave corporate. I was gonna have to leave corporate sooner or later. My brand was becoming bigger and bigger, and it wouldn't have been fair to have even an appearance of conflict of interest, between my brand and the company's brand. So I says, hey, I had the resources. I've retired from the Air Force. I had already retired from one corporation. It's like, hey, let's move to that third phase. And let me tell you something. I am having so much fun. Never had as much fun. And I'm living my best life. Imagine being able to be your boss and, knowing that you're being held accountable by yourself and a wife that likes shoes. So I'm really doing. She told me when I left corporate America, my shoe budget is not going to change 1 penny. So, brother, you better be out there earning, or you're gonna have to go back to work. So I'm living my best life, and the company we're only 9 months into this, and we're doing well, very well.
Good for you. Now, what was your greatest fear when you launched your company? What was your greatest fear?
I have to be, I know this is going to sound maybe a tad arrogant, but I really didn't have fear because, and the reason why, I had a safety net. I have a supportive spouse who is a corporate executive. I have, like I said, I have two streams of income in the form of two retirements. So it wasn't, that fear that most people have. And remember, I didn't start a singing group. I didn't get out and started going to the restaurant business. I didn't go out and start doing something that I've never done. What I'm doing is what I had been doing for 2 decades. Now I'm just doing it without the constraints of having, a corporation. So now I'm doing it for my corporation. Icarus Consulting is an S Corp. We're on track to shatter my, revenue projection. So I didn't have fear because I said, you know what, I'm going to try this. And what is the worst that could happen? And I had to be candid with you. I had a couple of clients that helped my transition immediately. So when I stopped working for my last employer, I went to work immediately and had 2 very high profile clients. So I really didn't have fear. I had anxiousness because my standard is so high. My standard is so high. I did not want to step out and now it's my brand, right? It's not my previous employer. If I don't do well, if I don't exceed client expectations, it's a reflection on me. And the brother don't like to look bad.
There you go. Well, see, what I love about that is that, number one, you had a plan.
Yeah.
And there are so many people now as entrepreneurs, which I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm kind of an idealist and flying by the seat of my pants kind of guy. And I've made the mistake of jumping into starting a company without having any revenue coming in with an expectation of something happening, and it didn't happen. And so you're back to square one. So I love the fact that you had a plan.
Right.
And you had it well thought out.
Right.
You had revenues already coming in, so I can understand why there wouldn't be as much fear.
Right.
Because you already had a great foundation.
Right.
Now, you mentioned on LinkedIn not too long ago that you were just a tad bit hesitant about being the face of Icarus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does it feel now?
Yeah. So I had always been the face of diversity and inclusion for whatever company I worked for. But it was always the face of blank. Now I'm the face of me. And so again, anything I do, people, you can't blame it on anybody. Everything falls on you. Icarus is you, you're Icarus. And so you have to constantly be aware of that. I never posted junk on social media, but there's been a couple of times when something angered me that I saw on CNN or MSNBC, and I wanted to, share it with the world. It's like, no. You didn't do that when you work for X. You can't do that now. You are a diversity and inclusion thought leader. There's a difference between thought leadership and venting and raging. And you vent and rage with your partners over a good drink and a cigar. But when you're talking to the world, people already know what the problems are. They want to know what are the solutions. Icarus is a thought leader and a solution provider. Let's not muddy the brand. That's what I mean about being the face. There is, and here is the standard, and you're an entrepreneur, you know this. The standard is not messing up. The standard is the appearance and the perception and the optics. So people are always taking these selfies and all this stuff like, hey, you're never going to see any pictures of me anywhere on social media with a drink in my hand or whatever. I represent a company who have clients, and they are expecting that when they're out there talking about, I'm partnering with Icarus Consulting to help me with my diversity inclusion, they expect a professional. And so I understand all this. I'm just saying now, the standard is not whether or not you messed up, but avoiding the optics, bad optics. And so that's it.
Yeah.
I was at a client function a couple weeks ago, big function. Here in Atlanta, my client was the sponsor of a major event put on by the city of Atlanta and the mayor, Scott, as a fundraiser, but it was a fundraiser, a F-U-N. And so I was very conscious about what pictures I took, how I appeared in that. And so that's what I mean about being the face.
Yeah, and again,
always on.
Extremely important when,
yes.
When you're working with your type of clientele and
yes.
like that. So
yes.
I commend you on being aware
yes.
of
yes.
the importance of that. So
yes.
So now I want to jump into your specialty, which is diversity training.
Yes.
But I want to start with what might be an unpopular opinion as a man who happens to be Black. And this is my opinion.
Right.
That I hear a lot of people, especially Black folks, say that we live in a racist society.
Okay.
My belief is that we live in a biased society, and there's this distinction between the two.
Yes, there is.
So I would like to get your opinion on that comment that we live in a racist society. What are your thoughts?
So let me put some context.
Okay.
My doctorate is in public policy. My doctorate is in public policy. So I studied public policy, and my dissertation was specifically about public policy and the disparate impact that it has had on African Americans. So if you look at the public policy of the United States of America for hundreds of years have not been to the benefit of African Americans, and in fact have had a disparate and a adverse impact. We're talking about the laws, policies of local, state, and federal government. People can talk about racism and stuff all they want. The United States of America is a country of laws. The question is there fair treatment under the law? Well, when the law itself is unfair, that's where people start thinking about it being racist. So I can quote you things like Plessy versus Ferguson, which put in place Jim Crow laws that the separate but equal, and I would say unequal, policies that we lived under, supposedly until Brown versus Board of Education. Brown was supposed to be instituted with all due speed. That was a quote from Supreme Court. 1964 Civil Rights Act had to basically enforce a lot of the things out of Brown, as did the Voting Rights Act of 65. I can go on and on. The public policies of the United States of America and how they manifest down to state and local level have had a deleterious and adverse impact on African Americans. That's not an opinion.
That's a fact.
It is a fact.
Got it.
For me, I'm a scientist. Even in my work in diversity and inclusion, which is about changing organizational behavior, is based on a fact. My book, Diversity Managers, Angels of Mercy or Barbarians at the Gate, is an empirical study, a scientific study about whether or not diversity and inclusion brings about benefits for organizations. So I tend to deal with facts. Now, we can argue and debate opinions all day long, but the fact of the matter is the public policies of the United States have had an adverse impact and continue to have an adverse impact even till the day. So don't get me started on that.
Yeah, so without question, there is still the residual disadvantage, if you will, because of those policies.
And the continuation of policies.
Yeah.
I.e. the Affordable Health Care Act. We already did not have insurance or had good access. And then, of course, you have a public policy attempting to mitigate some of it. And now you have, as a intentional effort to dismantle a law meant to help mitigate some of the previous residual. So you keep getting these waves. If you go on a beach, you keep seeing these waves. That's what the public policies of the United States, which is why we constantly find ourselves in these cycles where before we can enjoy the benefits of any change in law, there's a law to reverse the previous law. Again, fact.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful content to contemplate. And I get and I feel exactly what you were saying, because as someone who has dealt with every imaginable type of racism his entire life,
right,
I know the system,
right,
and how it's always been stacked against us.
right.
But me being the irrepressible optimist that I am, my
right.
point when I talk about when I think about a racist society, again, this is just my perception. When I look at the evolution of human beings over a long period of time, I believe, this is just my belief, that each generation gets less and less racist. I don't have any scientific proof to back this up. This is just my opinion. And so the reason that I made that statement at the beginning is that what I recognize is, you're from the 60s. You know what it was like when we would turn on the television and you never saw a black person ever. And so collectively, if you think about white people, the only experience they had of us was what their parents and their grandparents passed down to them. Well, now, if you're white, you are exposed more so. Now, obviously, there's still the negative media portrayal of us, but you have white kids that are now interacting with people that aren't like them in numbers that we've never seen before. So that's just my sense of optimism.
Got it.
For race relations. And so with your work, which we're going to jump into right now, I just want to kind of touch bases on some things that I'm observing and what you, I know, observe. So I want to bring up the story of the two brothers sitting in Starbucks.
Perfect.
Gets arrested.
I've got intimate knowledge of that, yes.
And so the point that I want to make is, obviously you're aware of that story.
Yes.
But what interests me was the fact that Starbucks shut down their stores to have their bias trainings.
Yes.
And so my question to you, and you say you have intimate knowledge of that, I'm wondering, because I personally saw it as a good thing.
Okay.
Starbucks was at least attempting to address some of those issues of bias. So from your perspective, what were your thoughts on that?
So I have intimate knowledge about that. I was actually in contact with the company and whatever. But let me connect two dots.
Okay.
Your previous dot about your previous conversation, which is a perfect segue to this. You said that as each generation has gone by, things have gotten less racist. What I would counter and say, as each generation has evolved over the last, from the time we arrived to this country, you've had laws which have constrained behavior. So that behavior that may have been commonplace in certain parts of the country in the 40s and 50s, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, you simply can't go out and do that. You cannot have lynchings. Now, I'm not saying there's not police shootings and stuff like that. Because I know somebody out there is like, well, what about this and what about that? What I'm saying is the laws of the country have constrained successive generations, constrained behavior. That's one bracket. On the other bracket, there has been this compelling business need to say, we cannot be successful without, that this country wouldn't even be here without the contribution of blacks. But as people have come to increase as they gotten more enlightened, businesses and organizations realize that is more to their benefit. So you've got the laws changing and then motivation changing. Now that connects directly to Starbucks. My conversation with the company went something like this, and I won't call out any names, but I was not in support of closing down the stores, and I'm on the record as on a number of podcasts having said this. I do admire everything they did. However, the situation at Starbucks, there's two facts that people forget. Number one, Starbucks had a diversity initiative where they had let's talk about race. And they had these cups, and they were encouraging their baristas to engage with customers and talk about race in the stores. It got a lot of backlash, but this is the same company who boldly wanted to have a diversity initiative because their stores are neighborhood community aggregators. You know, people go there to chill and drink coffee and connect. Where would be a better place to talk about some of these topics? Everybody forgets about that. That's number one. My second comment to Starbucks was, you had it, considering that you want people to come to the stores, to kick up, to sit back and relax and engage. Why did you have a store manager who made a decision that ran totally counter to your business case? Sure, your coffee has crack in it, but people come to your stores and they camp out. You see people there working. So you had one manager that made a decision completely counterculture, counterintuitive to the Starbucks business model. And so to me, shutting down for 4 hours of training, why not shut down and remind everybody what it is that we're about? We're not about coffee. We're about an experience. We're about a community. And so I would have spent 4 hours reminding store owners, franchisees, and corporate store managers what Starbucks is about. And that's where I think they missed the point. Again, evidence number 3, situation in Arizona. Police officers coming to a Starbucks. Arizona had been in this community was on the edge because of some police shootings a couple weeks before. So a customer tells a store manager, the police officers in the store are making me nervous. And the store manager asks the police officers to leave. Again, these are people that are running your operation at the front level at the front line that don't get it. It's not about, sure, they are making biased decisions as individuals, but why isn't your corporate values and your business model overriding that bias, that individual bias? And if your brand, with your brand being that strong, I would expect, like when I was in the Air Force, regardless of what people may have thought, they knew that if their behavior was inconsistent with the Uniform Code of Military Justice and military expectations, they were going to be having some bad conversations. So the Starbucks situation, I do admire everything, how the CEO responded, how he handled the crisis, how he was upfront. I tip my hat off to him and Rosalind Brewer. It's just the training. If I would spend 2 hours on training, 1 hour on training, and 3 hours on reminding people what our values are and how I want those values to show up in every store every day.
And so with that being said, because again, I had no idea what their bias training contained.
Yeah.
But the fact, as you mentioned, that they took the action.
Yes.
I thought it was, I agreed with that.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that they took aggressive action, I agree with.
Yeah. So, but here's my question though. There's a lot of people who don't believe that bias training actually works.
I mean, it doesn't.
So as an expert in that field, what type of training should you, and you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what would you as an expert have said or done in a training that could helpfully shift the bias? What can be done?
What I could tell you exactly. We're training of all types, especially diversity, education, and training. It fails because people are not held accountable for applying what they learned. Without that accountability piece, then you do not get any change in behavior. If you don't, without the sustainability part, and that's where the accountability is so important. You've got to sustain the training experience by holding, by managers holding employees holding other employees accountable for changing their behavior. Where the failure comes, you do the training, everybody goes back to work. Hey, check that box. and it's business as usual. The training, the information, the education, the content is as solid as the day is long, but it's no good if you don't hold them accountable for doing better as a result of their increased awareness. That's where the failure is. Now, people, and again, I say that because I'm inside the ballpark, and I know I have clients and have had clients where I was brought in to address certain things, only to find out a year later the same things were going on, and in some cases by the same people. Where was the accountability? If somebody who had embezzled money, they would have quickly addressed it. But these sorts of things, for a lot of reasons, there's not accountability. It's not the training. It's leaders and employees holding each other accountable to do something different.
So I want you to think about your trainings.
Yes.
And I want you to bring to mind, have you ever had an experience where you did a training and you experienced a dramatic shift in a person's perception as a result of the training? And obviously you don't have to give any names, but
yes,
can you share an experience that you've had in your training where somebody had that light bulb moment where they changed?
Yes, absolutely. So when I was heading up diversity and inclusion at Georgia Power, we had a training program that was designed to help leaders see how their behavior could be perceived by employees as retaliation. If a person spoke up, a person pushed back, a person asked too many questions, if a person, just basically wanted to challenge the status quo. We wanted leaders to see what types of behavior, what parts of their behavior could be perceived by employees as retaliating against them for doing those sorts of things. Most at the beginning, prior to the training, we took a survey and 99% of people, I don't do this, or I don't know how anything I could do could be perceived. And then after the training, and what we did, we took real world examples, not from other people, from right there in the company. And people saw it. They saw it on the screen in living color. And they says, oh my God, that happened to me. And everybody in that room realized that not only that they were simply engaging in behavior that had happened to them. And they says, oh, I can't, I see myself, they judge themselves based on their intent, but we help them understand their behavior based on the impact they were having on others. When we administered the post assessment, and to this day, I still get people from my former company that reach out and says, hey, I remember when you did that training and the light came on and we shared those examples. So yes, if it's real and you can show people their behavior and the impact that it has, regardless of their intent and regardless of whether they were aware of it, it still has the same impact. A driver who drives an automobile who didn't think they were drunk and who didn't intend to hit someone, when that car hits that other person, the impact is the same as if you were aware and if you intended to do it. That's what people, and that's why when I tell you the trainings don't work, because people like myself who develop the training and who facilitate it don't go that extra step and say, company A, you have to hold people accountable now that they know. And so, so you say, well, give me an example of how you hold people accountable. Hey, 90 days, how about after 60 days after the training, you send a survey to their direct reports and say, have you seen, did your manager tell you what the training they went to? Did they tell you what you could expect to see different? Or are you seeing anything different? And for those managers who get unfavorable feedback, how about calling them in and say, Tell me what more additional help you need, because maybe you're not supposed to be in leadership at this company. We're looking for a different type of leader, and maybe we should help you find something else. But we're going to give you. Tell me what additional help you need. We're going to give you additional help. Or if you think you'd like help finding another job, how about we help you do that? And that's what we mean by accountability.
Nice.
What happens is employees leave because they say the company is not changing, so I need to go. How about let's take in some leaders and let's make it so that they make some life change, some career decisions.
Now, when we think about diversity training, I've heard some people say, some Black people say, that Black people can't be racist. Now, I'm curious, in your work, do you facilitate workshops that are primarily all Black and have these types of conversations about maybe our biases?
No, well, what I will tell you is my experience so far has been we have this training, and regardless of the client, it's mixed. And we talk about behavior. That's what we talk about. We talk about behavior, and the behaviors we're talking about, the biases we're talking about. So can I share with you an example?
Sure.
I'm 6'3" African-American male. So I have privilege. I'm tall. I've got education. In some companies, I'm in the sweet spot of the company because I'm straight. In some companies, I have been in a sweet spot because I'm Christian. In some companies, I've been in the sweet spot because I don't have any visible disabilities. You see what I'm saying? And
Sure.
so the biases that people have against one or another are behaviors. And we wrestle with this term unconscious. What we try to help people understand is everybody has biases. What you can't, when biases are based on some sort of protected category, that makes them illegal. Now you're talking about discrimination. But that's not, in most cases, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about everyday biases where, as Black people, we experience them, right? You go into a restaurant, and it seems like the waiter is just moving super slow to get to your table, and you notice that, and it appears to you anyway, that tables that have white patrons are getting better, faster, more attention. But I could flip that script and make it, and bring in a Muslim family and Muslim guard, and they would have a perception. I could bring in a transgendered a person going through transgender, and their perception was that they're being the bias against them is because of their identity. So what I'm saying is everybody has biases. Everybody perceive they are the victim of bias. What I try to help people do is understand that people are going to have perceptions, and they're going to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
As leaders, you've got to not let them fill in the blank. The company should say, these behaviors are not consistent with our long-term success, and here is the blank. Let me fill in the blank. Here's how we want you to act here. And if you're not comfortable with that, if you think that there's a special place in hell for people who have a same-sex partner, and that's inconsistent with my company, you need to find another place. And when I'm talking about accountability, that's what I'm talking about. We're not having those conversations. We're just.
Got you. Now, boy, time flies when you're having fun. Now, you're also a futurist.
Yes.
So what is your perception of where we're headed when it comes to race relations from a futurist perspective? What do you see?
This is a tough one because I know what I want to see. What I think is that people are going to have let me put it like this. The United States of America believes that Christopher Columbus discovered America. No, that's not true. We're going to really discover America here in the in the next 2 years at the most. I believe this next election, and I predicted it in my last book, Winter in America, the impact of diversity on communities, companies, and the country. I predicted it then. Now that the country knows what it knows, now we're going to find out if the United States of America wants to continue to strive to reach the aspirations that's embodied in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, or whether in fact we are going to continue to be a divided nation. And it used to be black and white. Now you need to slice it like a pizza. And that's what I predict. I simply predict that everything's going to be laid bare, and people are going to make a choice. And we're going to see what choice they make. I can't tell you or predict what choice they're going to make, but I can tell you what has been given to us as a gift is everything is laid bare now. Everything is transparent. Nobody can say they didn't know. Good people who stood on sidelines and were silent and didn't do anything because they didn't know will no longer have an excuse. Now you need to make a choice. And we're going to find out if we're going to stay in winter for another 4 years or another 400, or whether or not we're going to emerge from this winter we're in and walk into springtime, followed by a pleasing summer. We will see. We will see.
All right. Well, we're gonna leave it at that. Now, me being the eternal optimist that I am, I'm still optimistic despite the current challenges in our world. But
good. Make sure people got to vote.
there you go. But again, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show, man. I want to thank you for coming on. But now I want to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can find out more about you if they have some information or some interest in maybe doing some diversity trainings or whatever you do. How do they find you?
So first of all, thank you, Michael, for what you're doing, shattering male stereotypes. This is brilliant. I'm hoping that your show attracts even more people. For people that want to continue this conversation with me, I'm very active on social media. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll hit you back. If you want to know more about Icarus Consulting, you can go to icarusconsult.net and you will learn more about my company there. And for clients looking to increase their diversity and increase the inclusion of their workplace, again, icarusconsult.net, or you can reach us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. We're prominently out there.
And your social media handles is Icarus, or is it under your name?
It's under Icarus.
Under Icarus. So
yes.
Facebook,
Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or you can or hit me up.
And that spell your name out so people know.
That's Shelton, Shelton, Goode, Goode.
Well, Dr. Goode, once again, I just want to say thank you, man, for shattering the stereotypes and being the amazing man that you are. And I look forward to possible collaborations in the future because we got a lot of work to do, my man.
Yes.
We got a lot of work to do. So again, it's been my honor and privilege to have you on the show. And I want to give you an opportunity now, though, just to kind of close with any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience.
Well, my final thoughts is when I talk to people like you, the internal optimist, it's great because it helps balance out some of my sort of practicality and pragmatism. But I will tell you, I like what you said. We've got work to do, but we need to do that work together.
Absolutely.
And so, hey, Icarus Consulting, let's defy gravity. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks a bunch. So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes. And as always, I just say, you have within you the ability, the capacity to create anything your heart desires. So shatter the stereotypes and just do you. We'll see you next episode. Take care.
Cool.